Hello and welcome back to Processing the Process, where we capture and discuss the technical, psychological, and contextual dynamics that shape the process of creating a work of art. Week by week, moment by moment, we are following Allie K. Dakers, teacher, actor, director, and producer, as she shapes the development of her innovative middle school drama club program and guides her students' idiosyncratic artistic journeys. Today we have a real treat for you. We are going to be covering the May 17th Showcase Scene Workshop, the 4 tech rehearsals before break, and the 2 tech rehearsals after break. So, strap in. It's going to be a wild ride, and we're starting with Friday, May 17th workshop. Now, given the gap between where the kids are and where they need to be, which, due to circumstances we've been discussing, such as inconsistent attendance, difficulty focusing, inability to meet with Allie at times outside of the actual rehearsals on Wednesdays, and the relative inexperience of many of the club members. So given all of that, Allie is particularly grateful for her high school mentors. These students perform many functions, helping organize the kids, working with the actors on their characterizations, assisting the groups to flesh out their scenes, and helping the kids determine costume, prop, and set needs. In particular, one high school mentor is serving as lighting designer and met with each of the groups in attendance on the 17th to discuss lighting needs and ultimately make lighting decisions. Now, interestingly, there was one student from the game show group who really needed to make decisions with regard to lighting and was hesitant to do so because her colleagues were not present. But she ultimately did when reassured by Allie that whatever decision she made could certainly be modified if necessary down the line. Once again, the club's progress was hampered by the absence of many cast members, and in this case it was due mostly to a multi-grade field trip. So they started with 6 kids and then 7 more joined after the field trip. So that's real dedication, I have to say. Now, the focus of this workshop was on working with sets, costumes, and lighting design with the high school mentor. And as for Allie, she spent most of her time working with the Hunger Games group on polishing and tightening their scenes and doing some intense troubleshooting with the foiled grandma scene. So I'd like to question her in particular about that. Can you tell us the challenges you encountered when working with this scene?
Yeah, it became apparent to me that the scene structure was still very confusing. I couldn't follow it. The actors couldn't really follow it within the scene itself. We have one member playing 2 different roles, which was a little confusing. One of them is very, very minimal and isn't really necessarily necessary, but they're keeping it in, and that's, if we can make it work, okay, we can do a little swap of a costume and whatnot. That's sort of, it's not the biggest problem. The problem that's biggest is just the absolute lack of, being on the same page and constantly changing things. And every time we would kind of steer in one direction, a member would be like, no, what about this or what about that? And it's like, we don't have time for what about. Now it's time to make decisions. And it's just been really challenging trying to make sense of that scene. So we'll get there, but they're going a little overboard with the set. Like I did pull some things from our theater space kind of like as options, and I think they used every single one of them, but like that wasn't the intention to necessarily. And they want to use the whole big stage. I'm picturing this in front of the Traveler, which is the curtain that splits the stage in half, rather. They really want to have a lighted cyc, which is that big white curtain that hangs. You can change colors on it, and it reflects all these different colors and effects and things. And I'm okay with that. So we did make a compromise with having the Trav half open, so we can create some space that really matches their size and the size of their scene. But also give them those lighting options and the qualities that they're looking for, and we need to compromise. And I think that really has been the most difficult thing about this scene, is having everybody understand that while it's not the ideal, a compromise, I mean, usually both parties are going away with a level of disappointment, because that's a compromise. You're giving and you're taking.
Absolutely.
If one party is completely happy, it means probably there wasn't a compromise. It was more like a takeover of some sort. But it was really hard to get through that scene. There's a lot of distractions as well. So that one I'm really concerned about that scene.
Well, let's see what happens with it moving forward as we go into the 4 tech rehearsals before break. Mm-hmm. So that means we have finally entered Tech Week. Yes. Hooray!
And to interject, the fact that we do not have at least one of these scenes like scripted yet, and we're going into Tech Week, that's crazy.
Exactly.
It is what it is. It's where we are. But that's just a statement kind of where we're at here.
Exactly. And I think we'll get even more of a sense of that as we continue in this video cast. That was a preview. But Tech Week is the point, generally speaking, in our experience, where the process of the students' theatrical knowledge and experience acquired throughout the entire year kind of congeals and all comes together. And so Allie designed a plan for the first 4 tech rehearsals, in which she added a little or added more and more elements on each successive day. Mm-hmm. So, for example, on day 1 of the tech rehearsals, her plan was to polish scene work and organize props, costumes, and sets. Day 2 would be polishing scene work and begin what Allie calls a stumble through with the props, costumes, and set. Day 3 would be the stumble through with props, costumes, and set, and hopefully lighting. And day 4 would be a stumble through with props, costumes, set, lighting, and then hopefully sound. So adding a little bit more each successive day. She also created a routine that she planned to follow each day of the rehearsal. And you'll see that it consists of what are now familiar warm-ups, if you've been following us on these video casts, combined with traditional tech rehearsal components. And Allie reviewed this routine with the kids on the very first day of tech rehearsals. So her routine looked like this, or at least that was the plan. Sign in, circle up on stage, take an emotional inventory, which you may recall means checking in with each of the cast members to see how they are feeling psychologically and emotionally coming into that rehearsal, leading into a 2-minute meditation. The traditional warm-up follows that, and now we have the additional vocal warm-up. At this point, Allie would outline the plan for the day, which in essence sets the organizational structure. The kids would then set up the props, costumes, and sets, and then Allie would work with each scene on stage one at a time until they're able to do a full run. And while she does that, the plan is to have the mentors work with all of the other groups on polishing the scenes, making props, organizing costumes, and any other tech needs that exist. And the hope was to use break time to do some ensemble building. So, Allie, let's see if we can give our colleagues a sense of what it's like to be immersed in the tech rehearsal process. So, Allie will take us through the key facets of each tech rehearsal, highlighting the kids' progress as well as areas that need work. And I'll periodically check in with Allie to see how she was experiencing the process as it unfolded. And I guarantee it's going to feel like you're right there. So starting then with the May 20th first tech rehearsal. Take it away,
Yes.
Allie.
The first group we had up on stage was Game Show. It is blocked. We did a stumble through, which is great. The robot girls are getting very creative with how they're sort of demonstrating these different bizarre characterizations that they're choosing to show, which is fantastic. A lot of fun speech and like wacky movements, things like that. And their costumes are really kind of fun too. They had pulled them previously, which is great. And there are all sorts of flashy, bizarre shapes and colors and textures, blending them all together, things like that, which is really fun. And I know that they also have plans, so they do funky things with their hair and stuff like that, which is really fun. Where we need work, though, and we had discussed this previously, and I'm still seeing the same issues, is characterization, really taking it further. And to be honest, it's more not as much the robot girls as it is the others that are more just being regular kids, really drawing out some of the more of the enthusiasm and the energy and the emotions that their characters are supposed to be expressing, because throughout the scene there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of worry, there's also a lot of celebration. So I want all those levels to come up to create that texture in the scene, especially in comparison to the robot half of the stage that are really kind of developing, so that I know we're going to have variants on stage, that's okay, but I would like to bridge some of those gaps a little bit if possible. Audition, they're blocked, we stumbled through, it was fantastic, overall strong, and I'm totally happy with this one. This one's going to be a good one. It's like the one that I'm like, oh, that'll be good. That's we can lock onto that one. That's good. We'll be fine. We do need to polish, though, and again, there's flow there. Anything at this point, we're just getting better. At this point, we're taking it to the next level, which is great. Yeah, which is really satisfying. The opening, we blocked the first half. It went really well. Which is surprise. I didn't even think we were going to get to it. So we were able, so we were able to block that. The kids are enthusiastic, and I'm going to give them a little pitch. Like, I'm going to take based on what they've expressed and they've talked about and the way they've explained their various scenes. I'm going to give them a little something that they can certainly tweak and do what they want with and make it their own, but for the structure purposes, for that second half of the scene where they're really going to kind of like have that mock pitch meeting where all of the different scene groups come up. I'm giving them something to work with, and honestly, if they don't learn that off book, that's okay, because in a real life scenario, you may have your notes with you, and that is okay. So we are finding ways to make this keep on moving, because I've said all along, I would love to not just make a speech. I want the kids to be the ones to kind of show what they've been doing and embody the entire experience. So we'll get there. So that's gonna be pretty exciting for Monday. So yeah, that's kind of where I was at with that and that. But notice, those aren't all the scenes. Right. We didn't get to do all the scenes on that day. The other groups that were not on the stage were doing other things. So,
well, as you had hoped, you did focus on one scene at a time while the mentors managed the rest of the kids and helped with tech and pulling costumes. And there was at least some progress made on
some
set,
progress.
prop, and costume needs. And the kids practiced what they could. But I understand, as you started to allude to just now, that you didn't accomplish as much as you had hoped, and that you really had to juggle a huge number of things at the same time.
Yeah, it was really crazy. I found myself feeling that pull of, like, knowing that problems are arising, knowing that things have to be solved, There was a point during rehearsal where I had to like put my blinders on and just trust that my mentors would take care of it, and trust that the problems would iron out. And if a kid comes to me, I can say, I know you can do this, go make this happen, this is going to work out. Like, I had to sort of convince them, convince me, but I really had to kind of draw that line of like, I can't do that right now. I have to just do this right now. And that was a real challenge for me. That's not really what it makes me feel like I'm inadequate, and that's not so fun. But it also was empowering because I was having I was directing my focus and just kind of like trusting in that too. So, you know, it's a giving up of one thing, of this, like, I don't know if it's not ego per se, but it's just like that fear of like, oh, I should be handling all of this. But so, you know, I also had to put my faith in the people that I did bring in to handle this, and they did, and it was strong in that way. I did have, though, at one point, you know, I had to manage some emotions among some members of the cast, and not that that's a bad thing. It just was really throwing our productivity off as an entire group, and that's not really, we didn't really have time for that. So I had to keep my own frustration in check, recognizing these kids themselves are starting to really feel this crunch. You know, so I had to kind of just drag her along with me, if you will, and model, this is how we overcome this. We just get back in, we find that resilience, we just push through, and we're going to do this together. And we did. We were able, and through our conversation, we were able to kind of turn that emotional upset that she was feeling around. You know, I said, we had a really tough day. We turned some good work into great work, and that's fantastic. And she did leave with a smile on her face, and that's really fantastic. And as I was actually working with the groups, finally on some scene work, like getting up there and working with them, I realized, oh, this is why. Okay, yeah, I really love doing this. And not that I don't love doing this, but you know what I mean. It was the heart of the work that I was actually tapping into again, not just making sure things were happening and rolling. It was like, now we can delve deep and really kind of pull, and I was able to see, especially with those blinders on, you know, to face what I was dealing with. I was able to see the good work that they are doing, not just what needs to be done. So that was really nice.
That's a key moment.
Yeah.
For sure, in light of the tremendous challenges that we have been speaking of. So that brings us now into the second tech rehearsal, Tuesday, May 21st. Now, it began with what I call an unexpected external challenge or contextual dynamic. And that is that a reporter for a local publication came to report on the drama club's work and Allie in particular. And she wound up watching the first part of rehearsal, which meant she saw the warm-up. She understood the plan of action for the day. She was able to see some blocking. And then Allie's work with the various groups developing their scenes. So she had a pretty broad exposure to what it is the drama club does, and particularly at this point in time. And she was also able to meet with several of the kids to get their perspectives on their experience of the process. And I believe that a terrific article is probably coming out of this, which is wonderful. So while that was going on, if we look at the stagecraft and tech side, Allie had her mentors pulling costumes and setting up the costume rack with labels. And in fact, they're doing so well that basically almost all of the costumes are ready.
They are. And the kids, actually, the mentors are guiding the students. So it wasn't like I told my mentors, this is what we need, go get it. They were like taking the kids to the costume locations and having conferences and helping them pull and all of this. So it was definitely still all about the kids, and the mentors were facilitating, which was good, which I could have certainly told my people, go make this happen.
Right.
You know, it's more of a challenge, obviously, but it's the authenticity of the experience. I want the kids to do it. So, all hail my mentors, because it can be chaotic managing that energy, and they did a fantastic job, especially with the productivity that we got done on that day with those elements. So it was great.
And I guess you could say the same thing with regards to the kids working with the mentors on creating their props and setting up the prop table. Yeah, you probably could have had the mentors do the lion's share of that work, but the kids constructed their own props. For example, the headstones for the graveyard scene, the podium and the television for game show, the fence for foiled grandma, and working on decorating various sets for Hunger Games.
Yeah.
And then it was the scenes.
Yeah. So what was happening on the stage? Okay, so the schedule, that doesn't happen necessarily. I had it really well mapped out, but no. Well, the opening, we did block the entire thing. We ran it. It was great. I think it's gonna be super cute. They're gonna continue to make it their own. I really just kind of barreled through it, so we are gonna. They'll tidy it up. It'll be fine. It's natural to them, which is great. It's already what they know, which we've said all along. So, we do need to build that overall enthusiasm, but again, that will come. I believe that will come. Hunger Games we had on the stage, we ran through half of the scene since not all the kids were present. Again,
there it is.
We are gonna plan, and really it's those larger battle full ensemble, not full ensemble in terms of on the stage, but like some of these scenes you need everybody, like this scene in particular, everybody needs to be on deck for this. And the battle scene in particular, if you don't have everybody, it's very hard to do. So we refocused on all of the dialogue scenes. We also we planned to meet during AAA, which is like their lunchtime, and worked on the volcano, and we worked through that on the stage, and it was really great. And what was exciting, I think, for the kids that we were on stage with at that time is that this was the primary work that the reporter was watching. So it was like poignant, it was relevant, it was also some of my stronger kids, and it was really me kind of like guiding and them making decisions, or me posing the question to think about, to solve the problem, but really just through like a Socratic questioning, not like a do this, but it's like, well, how would you, and given this circumstance, and what about, and have you considered not the answers, but like the guiding questions. So they were then they would take that, discuss with each other, and like come up with the idea and solve the problem, or work something, or try something. So that was really, I loved that was the group that was going, and I kind of orchestrated. I mean, I knew what I was going to do. I was like, what time is she here? But either way, that still had to get done without a doubt. I'm like, they remember we didn't get to everything the day before. So like, whoever didn't go was going first today. Like, it had to happen. So they did a great job at that. And we had, so next up, I knew we had some issues with the foiled grandma, which now is Baba Vera at this point, which is like the grandma's name. So it's a disaster. It's a disaster.
Putting it right out there.
It's a disaster. Wow. There's script confusion, emotions among the cast, again, same kind of issues. They haven't run it yet. We still have yet to get through it. And we were working for like 40 minutes, and we didn't have 40 minutes. That's a long time for a few minutes scene, just trying to iron out what is this scene. And again, I felt my own frustration growing. I saw the clock ticking. And I was like, we need to stop. And not because any of you are doing terrible things or making really bad choices, but I literally need to get the next scene up. They haven't had stage time. We're heading towards the tail end of the second half of day 2 and on the stage, and they haven't gotten on the stage yet. Exactly. So I kind of like pulled the plug on that. They were not psyched about that, but we didn't end it there. I had one of my mentors who is more of a stronger acting coach that I know that I've worked with her. She's a mentor, an alumni of the program as well. And so I gave her the script. I had her take them out and see what you can do with this. And it was interesting when they came back, because she had the look on her face that I had on mine. I was like, okay. She said that they did iron out some things, and we'll do the best that we can tomorrow. But I had to go there because I had to move on to the next scene to get them on stage, which was dead memes. Right. Due to the time of the day that it was, we got through about 80% of it. So again, we did not finish that one either. They do need a lot of work, but primarily because they're green, they're young in terms of the experience. We have that main, the main Meme Reaper. She has a lot more experience, and I think she's going to be able to lift them. But really, at this point, it's still, they're all on book. They really need extra time, like with me, and I feel like I didn't have that for them today because these problems can be ironed out. We just need more time, So that was a really frustrating experience. I also had some issues with focusing from some of the members. I don't know if it's that they don't realize that we don't have much time and everything kind of matters right now. If they genuinely are struggling to focus, if there's like things that they're thinking about that is not in this scene at this moment, and that's just something that they cope with in their day-to-day, I'm not really sure. There is a lot that's going on there, though. And we were also missing 2 out of the 5 cast members, so it's not really super helpful when you want to really nail things down and, you're missing a percentage of your cast. The rest, though, I know will lift everybody up. I believe that. That's kind of how we work a little bit, and especially with only 5 members in the scene, so I'm like, it'll clean up. We'll make it happen. But again, I feel like they didn't get the time they needed, because if we hadn't taken so much time, this extra 30 minutes or so, not 30 minutes, we ended up overall being about 30 minutes behind or something like that. Everything kind of got derailed around the whole Baba Vera experience. They would have been able to finish, and so I was like, right. So that's gonna be a little rough. And again, we only did half of the scenes. We have not yet done a run at all. And ideally, at the start of a tech, like in the years past, wherever we happen to be working, cafeteria, whatever, before we get our stage space, all the scenes are blocked. We're pantomiming all of the actions that we need props for, etc. But all of them are ready to go with tightening. We could shake it out, and then that just moves in the space, and then we build around it in the way you described in our opening today. So that certainly is. We are not really where we are typically supposed to be.
So even though the scenes that the mentors helped work on did tighten a bit, you clearly were still worried, as you've started to describe. What were some of the other concerns? At that time.
It's just there's so much focus issue that I'm dealing with, and I know this is a bit of a systemic problem that we've talked about, but it's concerning. We have some of our strongest kids are going to be going to a competition soon for a different event that they're involved in, which is great. It's fantastic. They're strong kids, and so they went far. So they're continuing on in this competition that they're in. But we are going to lose them for the rest of the week. We're not going to have them for the next 2 days, and they're only coming back after this break. So for them, that's a full week of not working for those kids. At the same time, they're very strong. I've been in communication with them, and we talked about before they were going, definitely what they needed to have done. And I will say that those particular individuals, they're pretty much where they should be, and they are performers. They are more experienced, these particular individuals, and I know that they're going to come back and they're going to be able to do what they need to do. They must. They must. So, and it was honestly, I'm exhausted. I'm getting so exhausted.
Yes.
So it's managing my exhaustion, my frustration, my own energy, continuing to pull from myself to give to them. That's starting, at the end of day 2, knowing where we should be. If everything was running smoothly and I'm that exhausted, I'm like, okay, I'm exhausted. And look how far we've gotten. Well, I'm exhausted and we haven't gotten very far. So that's a bit of a challenge, So, and again, while it was really exciting to have the media coverage, which is it's really great. I want these kids to, get that exposure and the fun kind of seeing themselves in the paper and all that kind of good stuff. It's also nerve-wracking, with you just want things to go smoothly. And I like what she saw, I thought was the best case scenario. Which is fantastic. But it was nerve-wracking making sure, just not knowing and having that undercurrent kind of playing out while she was there. And she wasn't there for the entire time, but she was there for a good portion of the time. Yeah. So, and at the end of rehearsal, like for me, it's never over. Like I'm in the building, you know, 3 hours longer after the kids go, and this is after a full day of teaching as well. Wow. So we're looking at like 16-hour, 17-hour days. Sometimes, who knows? I've lost track. Like I don't even know. But I was able to kind of like go through all of the kids' scripts, which I had them on the 17th. I gave them my masters to write in kind of more what they want regarding their tech cues, the lighting and sound. So I started to create some of those cue sheets for my operators, for my designers, which was nice. I felt like, okay, we got that. So maybe tomorrow we'll have lights. We'll see. But
and then tomorrow came.
Yeah, it did.
Wednesday, May 22nd, the third tech rehearsal. And as Allie worked on stage with each scene at a time, the rest of the kids were alternately working on their scenes with the mentors and serving as crew members for the scene that was on stage. So in this way, every club member has a role both on stage and backstage. And by this time, finally, the prop table was set up, and the light cues were almost all in place.
Yeah, my mentor is phenomenal in terms of how he knows how to use this technology. It blows my mind. It is not my strong suit. Like, I'll be the first to admit that. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and that is a weakness. I know what I see and what I want. I just struggle with the technological portion of it. So thank goodness for this person. So we had that in place. We were able to kind of run at least roughly, you know, what the kids can expect. And it's interesting too because as you described, like this sort of schedule that I had them on, like I literally like have like it was like a 3, like kids were either here or here all at the same time, rotating around with the time, you know, it was when we're going to swap. So you're either running a crew for a scene that's on stage or you're somewhere else rehearsing with mentors. Because I was like, I'm not ignoring or losing sight of giving anybody the time that they need. We don't have the time, and I had to figure out a way to kind of make all that happen. So that was sort of what I came up with, and it was actually pretty successful, which was really nice. I needed this badly. So in terms of what we were able to get on the stage, I think we got almost everything. Oh yeah, everything except the opening, which is actually pretty darn phenomenal. Because I knew, like, again, as we've been saying, like, I knew the opening would kind of come together, and it's okay if it's a little shaky. It's all right. So dead memes I got up there first because my lead, because they're not really leads, but the meme reaper had to go. I had already known about this, though. This is a good example of parent communication. You know, a few days, if not a week before, you know, mom had reached out and said, there's a standing appointment on Wednesdays. We can lose one of them. Which one would you prefer? And I understand that, especially if it's like a thing you need to be at, blah, 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 whatever. I don't know, lesson, whatever she may have. So we agreed, yes, the Wednesday after the break is more valuable than the one before. Plus, I know that she would pull it together. But I did have her for like an hour, which is great. So we used her. We really cleaned that up. So we finally have a scene. Hallelujah.
Wow.
They did overcome a lot of the challenges. And while, yes, they're green in some ways, and they're still kind of bumping into each other around, everybody knows what they're supposed to do. I'm confident that they will learn all their lines. It's more of a cue thing. It's less what they have to say. It's more of a when they have to say it. But again, that takes time. If we had the time on the stage and the repetition of practicing in the hours that we could have had, or the way that they could have used time, or we all could have used time a little more effectively in the beginning, we wouldn't be in this position. So those are the kinds of things that with tightening will hopefully occur, and them reviewing on their own as well. I really think that the kids in the audience are going to enjoy this one. I don't know that the adults are going to understand much of it, but that's the nature of the scene. It's okay.
Exactly.
It's a representation of their culture. That's fine. They do, and again, with the green actors regarding their characterizations, they're going to need to kind of step that up just a little bit. Open mic. What's fantastic is I had a mentor come who actually used to, when he was in club, he did stand-up comedy, like solid 6-7 minute set twice. Like he did it as a 7th grader, he did it as an 8th grader. solid, like really, really funny, like legitimately funny. And so, and relevant too. Like it was all about like his experience in school and little anecdotes and stuff. It was like storytelling and whatnot. Wow. Yeah, it was great. So he showed up today because I actually had chatted with him in the halls along the way. He was asking how it was going. And I was like, listen, actually, I got some boys that are kind of doing some stand-up. If you're around, if you want to come in, that'd be awesome. So he did a workshop with them. I had him working with them.
Fabulous.
They had so much fun. The boys came back and were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We had the best time. We were just like guys messing around, being hilarious, but we really, tightened up some things, and he helped us so much. So that alone made me so happy to hear. Because I was like, yay,
Something's going right.
Yeah, and but the experience though,
yes,
like that was like a legitimate example of like someone who came before really guiding the younger generation into how do we do this, and I didn't have to worry about whether appropriateness is another level. Like we're gonna see if maybe we need to like trim a little fat around the edges, if like, well, maybe we can't say it that way, let's say it this way. But I also wasn't gonna like. Tell them they can't go and explore when they're workshopping. That's what the purpose is. They will find, gold in that, which is great. So game show is now called Screen Time Scare, which is pretty cool, I think. So basically, and of course, it's because the girls get sucked into this game show at the cost of turning into robots if they lose, and at the end, they get sucked back out and they turn that thing off, sort of scenario. So it's basically, what too much screen time can do to you over time, or the dangers of that, etc. We have more experience. We do see a discrepancy again here between the green and those more experienced actors, but I'm really hoping that everybody will be lifted as we go. But they need to learn their lines. They're like totally not learning their lines. And I can tell you why, because I keep finding the same scripts on stage after rehearsal every single day of the people that don't know their lines. So that's interesting. Not the strongest choice to leave the script behind when you're learning your lines, but that's what they've chosen to do, and they have been reminded, so they'll just be continuously reminded. I also have sent home via, like, through their digital, I was like, here it is again, by the way. Stop leaving it on stage. Now it's in your mail. Now it's in your shared file, whatever the case may be. So we'll get there, but that's literally, I can't put the words in their head. They have work to do in that context. Hunger Games, working well. They definitely are tightening now, and they're working. We're working through more scenes in order, which is really fantastic. So I'm really starting to see this thing take shape, which is really, like, I really needed to see that. I know I've been saying how much work this group has put into this, and really taking it seriously. They're like my veterans, really strong kids, and so this particular scene, I really want to honor with all of its potential and bring that out. So we'll get there. We do need to focus on intensity, but I think there's a wariness that sort of exists beneath the scene, because I think they're still living in a realm of like, is this going to work or not? So we sort of talked about just trust it, just do it, just jump in, like leap and the net will appear. You know what I mean? That kind of a concept. We can't worry like, well, is this going to work? Well, who knows? But right now you're on stage and let's do this. So we're going to pull some of that out. And I think it's going to be pretty strong. The volcano scene is going to be really cool. We're using a lot of light and sound to show that, and the kids have stacked acting blocks in the center, like a big pyramid. And so the traveler's going to be closed, and we're going to start to hear rumblings, and the traveler's going to open, and we're going to have all the lights, the reds, and all of this going, and we're going to have two kids be the lava. How is that possible, you ask? Well, we're going to take long strips of red fabric. They're going to be hiding behind the volcano and start weaving them, and then come out in front. And it's going to be like interpretive dance. They're going to be the lava. They're going to be waving around, wrapping it around the kids. The kids are going to be like, oh no, it got me, and like die. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be really fun for everybody. Dramatic, yes, in a serious moment in the scene, in the script, but playing that, I think, is going to be really exciting for them. There's going to be a lot happening on the stage. In the midst of that, there's like battles happening, and kids are bumping into each other and fighting, and sword fights, and then at the same time too, Two of the characters who we discover are actually sisters. They're meeting each other way downstage and being like, oh my gosh, like don't let them know that we're sisters. So there's like a lot happening in that scene. There's a lot to choreograph, but it's coming together, that scene. Now, do we have it teched out yet? No, but we know what we want to have, so we're on the right track. And the actors themselves are really starting to conceptually understand, how is this going to play out? Let's get this on the stage. So we are moving forward with that, which is good. Our last scene of the day, we did not do the opening that day, but our last scene of the day was Baba Vera, and it did not go well. Again, they're still tweaking the script. We still can't. They had come in saying, yes, we fixed the problems yesterday, put them on the stage, and the problems were not fixed. And we did have like a meltdown of one of the actors, and I had to just step in. I just stepped in and I said, I'm taking over, in the sense of your ship needs help steering right now, and you need to trust me and let me do this. And even in that moment, with the first moment, like when I really kind of was like, I need to step in, there was like opposition from the person who was really getting upset over this at first. Then there was some relief. But once I did step in and was starting to make some executive decisions, and certain things were being changed a little bit to make it work, to bring some cohesion, then the upset continued, because there's been a lot of struggle for a couple of kids. And this, in this particular scene, one of those kids was really struggling with letting go of ideas that may or may not have been in place, whether officially or unofficially. And that was really, really hard to deal with, to the point that kind of took us to the end of rehearsal, and there wasn't useful time after that. And I had to like leave with her because she was getting upset. And I mean, it wasn't like an hour that we missed, but it was probably a good 20 minutes where we had to, the rest of the kids kind of stayed, and some kids had to leave early as well. So like there were, little projects maybe being done, or I know Hunger Games are working on their dialogue scenes, and there was stuff happening, but it wasn't as effective as it could have been. Right. Because I wanted to make sure that this child was okay and in a good place, and not internalizing a lot of negativity about the experience, about herself, about her peers, about me, about what was going on, because I wanted her to understand that it was for the best interest and to get this up and on the stage. I don't want to have to cut it. And the discussion is now out there, amongst the group, that this is one that really isn't looking good. Solutions need to be decided now, or it will not make it. And it's not a threat. It's not a punishment. It's a reality check. You know what I mean? So when I talked to her and said she just needs to, trust me, that I've been doing this for so long, and I can see the problems and I can see solutions, but you've got to give up that control. And in a way, so it should be a relief to not have it be your responsibility, this moment, the deciding factor. And then it's back in your hands because you know where you're headed and you can steer the ship again. But at this stage, we really needed to kind of do that. All of the waffling back and forth and fighting, decision making was just really impeding the whole scene. And I definitely did not want that to happen. I did not want to lose this scene. Even my husband, who had just sort of popped in to the space after he was done with what he was doing for the day, he was able to offer some wisdom as well. And, again, we ended, thankfully, on a positive note, on a fresh start for the next day, and all of these kinds of things. But that was super challenging, helping her to try and understand and see this bigger picture. It was really, really hard for her. So I'm curious to talk to her at the end of all of this, just have a little heart-to-heart and kind of see where she stands with regard to that bigger picture idea, to see if maybe with some space between the end of the production a little bit, and kind of see what her thoughts are reflecting back on that. I'm personally curious about that. So, right. But yeah, holy cow.
And we're curious to know how you felt about this third rehearsal.
Yeah, I didn't feel so good. I literally felt like Sisyphus every time, every day. And this is, what, day 3? Yeah. To still not have a run, even pantomimed, to still not know what scenes were definitely going to be making it. You know, I just felt like I was constantly starting where I left off the day before. And I know that that's not the case. I know that all around me, so many things were happening. There was so much progress that was happening. But I was struggling so much to kind of see those things because I was so overwhelmed and inundated with those elements that were not going well.
Right.
You know, and when I did come back in after speaking, you know, and helping discuss and work out some of the emotions of that one individual who by that time now it was the end of rehearsal, so I actually released her from where our discussion was because she was like ready to go. I went back and there were some kids still hanging, being like, so what's going on? You know, how is everything going? And I assured them, I was like, listen, you know, I thank them for maturity in dealing with what was going on and having the compassion, knowing that this is not easy for everybody and that we're all at different levels. And I just assured them, you know, that we'll get where we need to be. Like, I believe that, and you need to believe that too. Like, we all just need to believe it. And I thanked them for their patience. And I said, we're going to hit this again tomorrow. I said, we're getting through this no matter what. So, yeah.
And then, of course, that brings us to the 4th tech rehearsal, Thursday, May 23rd. And I kind of like to think of this one as an extended one that began at the beginning of Allie's day. And in fact, she took all of her time between classes to work on the production. And I think that while it made for an amazingly hectic day for you, Allie, I got the sense that those periods of time were some of the most productive you've experienced in a while. So what did you manage to squeeze in between your classes?
Yeah, it was crazy. Early in the morning, I met with our tech director who kind of techs out the space, making sure our headsets are working, making sure everything is patched correctly in the sound, you know, soundboard and all of these kinds of things, making sure everything is working technologically. And I found out that he actually is going, which was like such a huge relief, he's going to be doing the video for us, the actual like recording of the night of the performance. So I was like, oh my gosh. So if anything goes wrong, you'll be here. Yay. You'll be here because I'm not good at that. I know that I'm not good at that. And you know, no matter how amazing my lighting guy student is, it's like that's what he's doing. He can't go and do these other things if anything should happen. So so that was like, honestly, I felt like I was just like in good hands, kind of. You know, I was like, whoo, one less thing, yay. And that was like a real like nugget of like I just was just like holding that like, oh, that is so good. I was like, that's so good. I needed that. I was able to, so while he was doing that, I was able to set up the entire backstage the way that I want it in terms of everything in their starting places, that when kids are moving everything, that's where they're going to go back to do that. You know what I mean? So I set that up. They were then from now on responsible for maintaining that, but I've set it up so that it's exactly how I like it. So I felt like we had actually moved in. I mean, I don't love that it was 4th day of tech, that I felt like we finally were ready to do a show, but, you know, I had everything like ready for them to work with. We have tracks, which we've talked about, following those tracks backstage, who moves what where. I didn't assign particular individuals, but everything of every scene, I had written all those out and typed all those out and posted and have them ready on the walls and everything. So like scene 1, this goes there, stage left, stage right, move this to that, blah, 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 blah. It's all listed out. Right. So that they can follow the roadmap, follow the tracks, if you will. So that made me feel really good, and that was actually not as difficult to create as it sounds, because I always just use the previous years and then edit as I go. And it is interesting because it keeps you kind of flowing as tracks do. So I was like, oh, what's next? Oh, there it is, boom. So it was like my morale was like starting to get like boosted a little bit as I was accomplishing these things. During the lunchtime, we all kind of had a lunchtime together with the open mic boys, so that I could kind of see where they were at, and they wanted to show me, and it was really kind of great, and they did a really nice job. They are going to need to to kind of focus on their timing a little bit, but that is the nature of what they're doing. So that's literally the heartbeat of the skill that they're working on, which is great. I was also able to finish the lighting cue sheet, which is I type it up. It's all very organized and easy to follow, and all of this for my lighting designer. So it's not just notes in a script, or I gave him like a blank one that he kind of filled in when he worked with the kids, and now I took everything and typed it so that it's all color coded, everything. And then I also started to do the same with the sound cues, which was really great. I didn't have all of them, but in terms of what am I going to need, I was able to kind of figure out a lot of that, which was really great. So that was the morning. Or that was throughout the day.
This was all before the actual rehearsal, in which Allie and the kids worked a great deal on transitions involving sets, props, and lights. And Allie, as she said to me, very rapidly walked through the backstage tracks with the kids.
It was stay with me or you're not going to get it. If you miss it, help them. That's what I kind of said. And that was it.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't have time. And you made the executive decision, so to speak, not to use costumes at this point in time.
Correct.
Feeling that they could potentially lead to confusion if the kids perceive that there are just so many layers they're working with all at the same time. At this point in time, it could get a little tricky. So
the only costumes that I did work with, though, is quick changes so that we can choreograph those, and any students that I think might need a little assistance at any point, like giving them a buddy, things like that, just to make sure that I have things in place and we know what to expect when we do start layering everything. So there were a few piecemeal things that I kind of took to make sure was happening during this run.
Exactly. And then Allie and the lighting designer tweaked and then finalized the lighting cues. So that was pretty solid at this point. And the lighting designer was also now able to begin communicating with the mentors via headset.
Yes, that was huge.
Which was huge, but even more huge. Is that a actual phrase, more huge?
It is now.
It is now. Was the fact that this was the very first time that the ensemble was able to run through the entire show.
Yes. They ran from start to finish, including the opening. Took 3 hours for an hour show, but they did it. So thank all of the gods for that. But I had made that decision. When we started, when I woke up that morning, I was like, we're not getting through it. We are not leaving here. I'm not going on this break without running, without seeing what this is going to be. I could not have handled leaving that on the table when unfinished. So so the opening is great. Again, typical, just tightening, make it more enthusiastic, etc. They're going to just have to play with it. Baba Vera, now called Day at Babushka's. Okay. Talk about an evolution. I fixed the script. I spent a lot of time on Wednesday evening knowing that we cannot do Thursday without this, getting included and getting done. So I fixed the script based on what they were hoping to find. I clarified some elements of it, because again, these are young writers, so even the structure of their script is not necessarily completely intact, and they didn't come to writing conferences for me to help them with that. So I'm reading through their text itself, and no wonder they're so confused, because the text itself was a little bit confusing. So I cleaned it up. I made it a little more visually organized. I wrote in the blocking. They had it written in their scripts, but things change, this and that. So I just wrote in the blocking of where everyone is going, what everybody's doing, made some decisions about those problem areas, and this actually, giving this to them really made a big difference. They were able to do it. They sort of pseudo had script in hand, but then it was not that there were too many changes. There was 1 or 2 line changes. It was mostly about solving some blocking issues and some context of where we are and what's happening. So the lines weren't necessarily altered. It was more the organization of the scene.
Right.
Screen time scare. Oh, and the thing too about that scene is that, and I don't know if I'd mentioned this before, the Day at Babushka's, it's autobiographical, the lead writer. It's about her great grandmother and her family, and yet the student that was kind of struggling with it was not that student. So I really didn't want to sacrifice this particular scene when someone who was just, really struggling to kind of learn her way through her struggles. I didn't want to cut something when it was a different kid's idea because of another student's, working through some challenges there. So I was like hell-bent on getting this one in.
Yes.
So I was really happy that it was successful. They are going to be, going to be able to make it work. Screen time scare, it does need work. We have those actors still on book because I found their scripts again. Interesting. And again, those same two kids that all throughout all these weeks have been leaving early, left early again. And it's the girl, it's the two that always leave their books. So they also aren't going to learn their crew roles because they weren't there to learn them, and they're not going to be there to know what they're doing during this run where we are also establishing and reiterating the crew roles that we had practiced on Wednesday, I guess that was. So yeah, and I need to energize some of that acting, but hopefully in time that will come. But again, we don't really have time, so it's like, do it, kids. Open mic, really awesome, and it's so funny. These are the kids that wanted to do the cringe comedy, but weren't quite sure how to find that flavor, and they're finding it. They're creating these, like the dynamic that they've chosen to develop is very creating this little awkwardness between the two main performers, and we have another one like on the bottom in the background, which is really cute. So they're actually really accomplishing their goals and doing it successfully, which makes me happy. They just need to tighten that up. Dead means the kids, they do have a good handle on it. It's adorable. Wow. It's green. I mean, kids are like bumping into each other, but at this point I'm like, they're cute. It's fine. And as I expected, that lead writer, the Meme Reaper, she really is kind of being like a nice guiding force and leading by example and helping to give structure. And even in the blocking that they chose, she's very centrally located for a lot of the time with a lot of things framing her, and that helps the other kids a lot to kind of know where they are. So they made some good choices in their blocking to provide structure in itself, which was really great. So which was an interesting thing. Hunger Games. If we can get this tech, it's going to be amazing.
Wow.
If we don't get this tech, it's not going to be amazing.
Oh my.
I mean, it will be amazing, but it will not be what we all envision. And what's most upsetting is that if the tech is not successful, that's not their fault, that's my fault. And I don't want to do that to their scene that I know that they've done so much with and delved into and put so much of themselves into. So for me, that scene is a real... It's a point of anxiety for me, for sure, because I want to honor what they've done, and they're doing all that they can. They're doing their job. Once it's in the booth, once it's in our hands, then that becomes our job, that aspect. And because we haven't had the proper amount of days for the tech, really any yet, we don't have any sound cues or really. I mean, we very loose, like not really. It's like I know what it will be, but we haven't done it yet. There's so much to choreograph between like narrators on the microphones and cannons and gongs and things and all succession. And some things are boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's pretty wild. So that's my biggest concern. Like, it can be so amazing if we can meet them where they are with what we need to do.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I stated to the whole group. I was like, guys, we have work to do too, pointing to my mentors behind me. I was like, it's not just like get you on the stage. It's like we have a whole other layer. Like, this is why I was so, reiterating all the time, like, this needs to be show ready once we head in there. And we aren't. And so this is where my anxiety really starts to build. So with regard to audition, they're doing a great job. The little girl who's Matilda, really adorable. Everybody, all the characterizations are really coming out, really becoming strong. We have a couple of girls doing like anything you can do, I can do better thing, and they're making it really funny, and like it's really just very, very sweet, very cute. All the different characters you might find in audition, positive things, negative things, the little infighting, the little like supportive stuff you're gonna see, like all of that's really represented in this scene, and I really love it. So that was good. I do want to talk to I want to work with the girl playing the director. At this point, she's kind of a little flat, but I think it's just because I don't think it's a skill thing. I think she just doesn't, I don't know that she realizes she can really turn this into, something more than just someone saying lines and saying next and this and that. She can choose to be a certain way or a certain archetype or whatever. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm sure that she's going to, she's gonna pull that one out. This was one of the scenes, though, that was heavily casted by kids that had to go to that competition. So I feel good knowing it was strong before, and then hopefully we're gonna come back and it'll be strong. So the missing pieces, it impacted it, but those that were there, it's looking good. So that's really great.
Super.
Whew.
And then after that run, as Allie has told us, she spends hours more in the theater, and she continued getting all of the props and costumes ready for the next tech that would occur right after break. And you said, Allie, you finished the sound design.
Yeah.
At that point too, which was you were really nervous about. So here, you made it through the first 4 tech rehearsals before break.
Yeah.
You've given us, you've opened up a little door so far into what you've been dealing with. Can you flesh out what was going through your mind and perhaps your body at this point? It's right before break. Yeah. You've done 4. You've got 2 to go.
That whole Sisyphus thing, like, I am no longer Sisyphus. I am the rock. I'm just getting shoved and falling down a mountain at this point. My anxiety was really, really kicking up a notch. In some ways, though, like, at the end of that day, Thursday, the end of that 4th day, it was the first time that I took a breath and said, okay, we have a show. I also reminded myself that I wasn't going to let Thursday happen without that happening.
Yes.
But I was able to achieve that goal for myself and for the kids, too, because I didn't want them to walk out of there wondering what they were going to walk into on Wednesday, not knowing, not having a handle on something, that was tangible. And so I really do feel like they worked so hard. I pushed them so hard, not beyond their limits. We always stop. We always have a nutritious break. I make sure there's food. There's always a break with food and like healthy things. I had no junky sugar things at all. And it was interesting. One of my kids was like, I brought Oreos. I was like, is that a good choice? She was like, no. I was like, yeah, you might crash. Save for the wrap party. She's like, okay. So like, I was actually really like, okay, good. You made, wow. I'm not against eating junk food sometimes, of course, but like when we have to have energy that's and fuel like energy, like we can't be eating that. They'll crash. So I worked them really hard. It was messy and it was choppy, but we had a show for like the first time. I saw things in order. I saw from the first line to the last line of the scene, and that I needed that. I like really, really needed that. We have things to address, and honestly, I really literally could not have done it without the mentors. Like I literally couldn't have. I needed more of me. Like if I didn't have them, I don't know what would have happened from managing my own stress and my frustration and making sure that I'm in check and I'm not like, not that I would like, yell at a kid, but just anyway, just not letting myself lose sight of my own focus because of my own emotions rising or something like that. So I was able to kind of, keep that in check. But then, once all the kids leave, then it's like you break down a little bit.
Of course.
You know what I mean? It's really taking its toll. I'm like in a pit of anxiety at this point and like I'm forgetting to breathe. And, it's that kind of thing where I'm not like holding my breath. It's like I have an exhale and I'm like, oh, I didn't breathe. Like, oh, okay, I should be breathing. Like I should breathe more. Like I should breathe more. Yeah, I should breathe more. Like, but it's like my mind is thinking about so many other things that even those most basic functions of like your own life support or like pause, like we have to worry about, like that shouldn't be like, so that's just a testament to like how stressful this has been. And it is not typical. Like this hasn't been typical. So this is like a whole new way for myself to kind of work on and manage and create, some self-care for myself to kind of be ready for what we're going to walk in on, so that's really hard. but I really tried to cling and remind myself, to all of the good things that have happened over the course of the weeks and the people that helped make that happen, which are the kids and my mentors. So,
well, taking all of this, you now had a few days off, and I put that in quotes because, not surprisingly, in fact, you were still doing work over that period of time. I think at this point, I would like to turn the videocast over to Allie as she describes what it was like during those final 2 tech rehearsals right before the show. And it will, as promised, I think, feel like you are right there with her and feeling everything that she was feeling, the full spectrum of emotions, and I think you'll get a very good sense as well of the tremendous number of contextual variables that Allie had to contend with moment to moment to moment over time, and how that ultimately wound up impacting her. So, Allie, please tell us about the May 29th and 30th tech rehearsals before the show that was then going to take place on the 31st.
Well, over those 5 days of the break where I just kind of sat there worrying, I was actually super energized, and I was almost like disappointed because we had finally, like, I woke up Friday being like, why can't we have rehearsal? Like, now is the time to do this. Like, everybody like this is the time, but I didn't. I used that energy and I channeled it and funneled it, and I finished all the sound cues, created all my, the playlist, got everything organized, made sure all my scripts were teched out, meaning like I cleaned up and made everything look exactly as it should be, so that anyone can follow it with all the lights, all this, everything. And I make sure that was perfect. I reviewed them and studied them, and like I could tell you exactly what's when, because the more I know, the more I'm ready. It's like rehearsing without actually being there. All that visualization really does kind of play into to helping you learn, which I do with my kids a lot, the visualizing and whatnot. It's a huge tool. And via email, I reached out to the parents to remind them the importance, I was like emphatic about like the importance of being there and supporting your kids and being there and running lines with them, and please make sure that everything that they're supposed to have in, is in, which at this point it was. There were a couple of pieces that we were still missing that I was going to take care of, like just like bringing like pots and pans, little things like that just hadn't, or that had been added on to kind of texturize a little bit more, that the kids decided. But really a lot of that break time was about self-care. I had my support system around me, really good friends, my husband really kind of taking care of me, like yoga, hiking, going to the pool. My friend's pool had opened in her, at her home, and swimming in a lake, barbecue at a neighbor's, like anything I could do to distract myself from not being able to do what I felt most that I needed to be doing, It's just not knowing how these puzzle pieces are going to fall into place. Right. It's really, really hard for me to manage that. The anxiety really started to kind of get in the way of me trusting that it just would be okay, because I know how hard I had to work to even get it to this point. And at this point, I was also like, I'm so threadbare. I was like, so I tried my best to recognize I have to turn it off. And those activities that I did were a way to kind of do that. Making sure though that I was responsible and ready to walk in when I needed to,
Right.
So, so we walk in Wednesday. During the day, made sure the theater was all set, ready to go.
Right.
Make sure all that my sound cues worked in the system, that the system had been teched out, like the space. They did. I did not have the actual computer I was going to be running things on, so I was using my phone, which was not ideal, but it worked. I mean, they were there, they sounded good, whatever, but it was definitely not an ideal interface. I copied all of my scripts that I had written, all the tech cues in, make sure, just basically just doing everything I could to make sure I felt organized and ready during the day. Okay. And I was anxious all day. Like, I had like a pit in my stomach and tingling arms and like all of these things. And it, this happens. It doesn't happen often, but like it was a real check for me to be like, wow, like I'm a little overwhelmed right now, and that's okay. I know the job's going to get done. It's just I'm usually the one that ends up taking the toll, and that is something that this experience really has taught me. I do need to be more mindful of that. Again, the job's going to get done. It's just at what cost, and that's okay. It is what it is. And I breathed, and I did stop during my day and did my meditations and all of these kinds of things. I checked in with myself and I used my tools. So I did what I was, what you're supposed to do, to kind of be there in my best self for my kids. So the plan for the day is to run the show with all the elements in place, tighten all the transitions after the run, because we were only going to be able to do it once, I know, but we'd have that time after, because at this point it better not take 3 hours. So I wanted to tighten transitions, like in between scenes and the set movements and things like that. Right. And then I also wanted to, I realized we've been rushing through while we have our break all the time. Every rehearsal we do stop and have a break. I haven't really checked in with them as much as I'd like to, or maybe might have in the past, because it's just been like such a go time. Sure. So, I my plan was to, during snack, kind of take that little inventory, not so much of like, how are you feeling, but like, how are you feeling about the process itself, and talking about what you're learning about yourself, and how is all of this going for you, and what are you pleased with, and what's been challenging, and that's okay, like what, all of that, which is nice. It brings them back together as we take stock as a group. Right. So starting rehearsal, it was right off the bat, we had attendance issues, and I'm like, how is this even possible? Wow. We have 2 days. How is this even possible with reaching out to the parents and everything? And no, I didn't get any parental contact about any of these things. But I had, some students had to leave early, which was frustrating. And it was just really frustrating, because I think where she was going, I don't know. A kid can choose and a family can choose what takes precedence, but where she was headed was not necessarily something that was detrimental in the time frame at which we were working compared to what we were doing. And that's her family's call to make, and that is fine. But it really did impact the day. It impacted the rest of her scene, which was really frustrating. So, yeah. And I also learned that another person in that same scene, something had come up for her on the 31st, and she was no longer able to perform in the showcase. She was upset. We had to find a replacement very quickly, and we did. I basically pumped up a veteran. I was like, you got this. I know you can do this. I know you can do this. And she was like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, you're just going to do it. But you're going to be great, and you're just going to do it. And she was like, okay. And she embraced it, and so, and then another kid just didn't show. And I had and I will say this, though, about the student that had to step down. She still showed up for the rest of the time and still worked and still did everything that she needed to do for her scene. She was the lead writer of her scene. So I feel really heartbroken that she couldn't perform in it, but she never gave up on it. Like, she still was always there for all the hours that she could be there, which I thought was really commendable. Yes. But then another kid just didn't show up. Found out later there was like an appointment or something. But again, no contact from home. So it's just kind of a little bit bizarre, that one, that event. So during rehearsal, again, my mentors came through, had everything ready to go. They're not like doing it for them, just making sure things are where they need to be, so that there's one less thing I have to worry about. And then backstage, they're amazing, making sure everything is running well. They're on headset, they're helping the kids, reminding them, helping them with the tracks, all these things. So that was really great. We opened with the warm-up, and in that warm-up, I gave them like a really huge pep talk about how this is it. This is the time. Like, now. There's really literally no other time. Now is the time. And during our meditation, I kind of brought that back a step, rather than the intensity of this, sort of instilling that in them. The undercurrent then I sort of laid through, or on top of that really, was having them sort of think about, like, why did you step into the door in the first place all those months ago? You know, why did you come to club? Connect with that. You know, what about this moves you? You know, think about all the work that you put into this, all the time, the effort, what you've created, what you've shared with one another. You know what I mean? And this is all the time that we have left to do this year. Soon it will be over, and it will, like everything changes. It will exist for a moment, and then it will be gone. So let's embrace the time that we have left and make the most of it, and bring the potential out of it, and infuse it with the love that you have for this piece. Like bring that all into what we do today. And that was what I sort of built their meditation around, as they were kind of in their own, within their inside time, you know. So yeah, and then and I did plan that after we did our run, we were going to do our transition, which luckily were able to do. The overall outcome, we did get through it. It was faster than Thursday, as expected. It really had to be, and I expected it to be, which is great. Okay. I did add the sound cues, like I used our cues, and it made a really big difference for texture and depth and all of that, which was really, really nice. Sure. But it's a lot to manage and coordinate. It was just me and my lighting mentor in the booth, so like I'm calling the show, I'm taking notes, I'm telling this, I'm saying move that traveler. He's on the headset for me, luckily, which has actually worked out. I'm usually on the headset, and so is he. In years past, I would always be on a headset, but I actually kind of liked not being on the headset because I could just relay, and he's such a calm individual, which I so appreciated. So yeah, like his energy was like, not that I was like wah at all, at least on the on the outside, but even his demeanor helped me be calm, and it's really he's like I said, he's a pretty phenomenal human. So. But there are over 60 light cues, over 30 sound cues, and that's a lot for an hour show. A lot, written by kids. Yes. So, it took about 2.5 hours to get through, with stops, corrections, and some cue to cue, and some lighting tweaks and things like that. But, we're getting there. And the kids did the best they could. The acting still needs a lot of work for some of those younger kids, as expected. Right. But it is up to them for this point, and I have notes for them, which is like a miracle. And so hopefully they'll just continue to raise the bar. The following day, Thursday, the plan is to run it twice. So we'll be able to give notes before, run it, notes again, run it again. Okay. Issues that we did have, the headsets were not working. Rehearsal started with no headsets, and I was like, well, what is going on? So I called our tech guy, and, through the miracle of technology, I was able to show him, with my phone what I'm seeing and what can he look at. And, of course, it was like the stupidest thing, like some button tucked inside a machine behind 17,000 wires. And, like, if you don't know that, you don't know that. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So, like, it was frustrating and challenging. But we were able to get it up again, and which obviously made a huge difference. Sure. The thing with my lighting mentor is that I didn't know that he actually had an event that day, so he didn't get there till about 4 o'clock. So I was like, what's happening? What's going on? It's okay. It's all right. Everything worked out. He came in and just totally picked up where we left off and took care of it, and it was totally fine. And what actually was really great is my 6th grader who was running Spot. He had never been able to run the Spot for other technical issues that we had. So my lighting mentor was able to get him up there and able to actually, for the first time, meanwhile, this kid now, this 6th grader, never done Spot in his life, is only getting to do it 2 days of practice before actually doing the show. And he picked right up, and it was great. And and this same kid, when the mentor couldn't be there, I was like, you're in the chair, you're sitting there. He's like, what? I'm like, you got this, just hit go. Like, you got this, it's okay, everything's all set. And he's like, okay. But then by the end, he's like leaning back in the chair, he's like, he's got it, he's going up and down. I'm like, all right, give me some flash. He's like, them is good, you got it. So like, that was such a beautiful thing to see. It was like forced confidence, like, you can do this, just do it, you got this, so he feels really good, and I think he feels like a little bit of ownership there too, which is really lovely. Right. And like, he mattered, like he was needed. I was like, you have to do this, like you have no choice. I have to do this, and this, or you're doing that. And he was like, okay. Sometimes that's really, like, you throw them in, you learn to swim, it's good. And again, kids are not entirely off book, and this was kind of ridiculous. Oh my so gosh. Much so that they weren't allowed to have scripts. Like, you're off book now. I literally was like seeing kids like, oh no. And I was like, you're actors. Like, at least pretend it's not written on your hand. Like, what are you doing? Like this, you're not even doing this well. Like with love, but you're not even like cheating well.
Oh
like
my
what are you?
gosh.
So that was just ridiculous. I'm in the booth with my mentor, and we're like, "Did you see that?" Another one, and then a second one does it, and then like I was like, "What do they all like convene and like decide this was the best route to take?" Like it was silly, it was funny, but we were like, so that was kind of funny.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then again, we're still, and this is a focus issue, still struggling with kids not being like hands-on ready backstage when it's their scene's turn to help move another scene. You know what I mean? So that was a big issue that we definitely, and the changes are taking forever because they're like, kids are just like chatting and hanging out. There's no phones. All the phones are gone, so it's not that, thankfully. But, so that's just like a focus issue. So we're going to be addressing that. And again, that's why I almost anticipated that. That's why we planned on running those transitions. So we did clean up a lot of that by the end of rehearsal that day. And also, mentors reported some rudeness backstage. So we reminded the group about chain of command. And we did a lot of apologizing and a lot of thanking the mentors that are there for us, and a lot of being reassured that, believe me, they know what's best, and anything that's coming out of their mouth, assume it came out of mine. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I said, what does chain of command mean again? And then they were like, it's blah, 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 blah. And they were right. And I was like, so then why would you ever not do something that they tell you to do? That kind of a thing. So, and we had no problems with that. And there was a lot of apologies and whatnot, which is good.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just so much to manage. Like I've done this so many years in a lot of different ways. This particular one, it is rocking me. Like it's really rocking me.
Yes.
It really is. They're just not as ready as I want them to be. And that sends me into the thoughts of what could I have done differently? What should I have done differently? So that's sort of where I ended at the end of this day. A little bit. I mean, we did it, but a little bit like what could I have done differently? So, and I cleaned up afterwards. I worked on the program and left at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So it was tricky. Not the end of the world, but not awesome either. So then we head into our final tech Friday. The kid who had the appointment that wasn't there on Thursday and Wednesday. Thursday. Okay, sorry. So our final tech Thursday. This kid wasn't there on Wednesday doing an appointment. I found out via text from a friend that she's stepping out of the production the day before the show. There was no like talking to me about it. It was like someone was like, where's this kid? Oh, I'll text them. And then the text came back being like, I don't think I'm doing it anymore. Like that's how that ended. I was like, really? Strong choice. That's really going to be memorable for you. And it's not good. I mean, and honestly, like I actually do believe a lot in second chances because these kids are so young and this particular group is like really immature. So, we'll be having a discussion and we'll be talking about, ways to kind of handle that differently. Again, providing the opportunity. How do we step down from something if we know we can't do it? Right. Things like that. But at the same time, this is not that it's too late. Like you are now really letting people down. You're going to apologize to people. Like this is not a great thing. And I have no idea what her side of the story is, so I have no judgments on it. It's just disappointing because it was not the best way to handle it, and these kids were all relying on this person. So we will work around it. It will happen, We found a new person to play the role, and it worked, and it will be. It will be what it will be. Okay. And it's fine. It was not a huge role, thankfully. I mean, and all at the end of the day, it was an easy thing to fill, but, not the best thing in the world. And as we know, our plan is to run the show twice. So our routine went really well. What was great in the start of the rehearsal is I kind of stepped out of it. I said, okay, kids, get yourselves warmed up. And they did. They really, they took the helm. Super. They started taking charge, I reiterated that message from our meditation the day before our last day, like embrace it, like everything, yes. Not like go, 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 but like, wow, like let's create this. Like this is your last chance to play in this way before we share what we've been doing. So, all of this hard work has led us through the journey. Like let's really celebrate that. So yeah, our first run, it ran about an hour with no stopping as I planned. There you go. That's good.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so much stopping and starting that's really obviously what adds up your time.
Right.
So when we just fly through, we realize, oh yeah, these are 4-minute scenes or whatever. Well, Hunger Games was significantly longer, but the whole show with 7 scenes was about an hour long. The acting, still some issues, of course, as we can imagine. We got some green behaviors, not loud enough, bumping into each other a little bit, not turning out, not having the awareness, but so much better. And kids kind of more subtly helping each other sort of fix themselves, more in a more subtle way. So like using their stage space to help others find theirs, kind of a thing, which is really nice. I like to see that. What I really learned here in terms of the biggest issue is the sound cues. I cannot do them myself. It was a disaster. It was not good at all. Particularly for Hunger Games. The other ones are manageable, but Hunger Games, the scene that the kids put so much of themselves into, they designed it with a complex design, but effective, like really strong. And I was not doing it well, and I had sort of already knew that it's not my strong suit. And I was like, oh man. And I did have a mentor that was going to do it, but this person's schedule didn't work out, and then they couldn't. But I was like, how hard can I'll just do it. It's fine. I will work it out. I learned that I just really couldn't do it. It proved too much. Calling the show, taking the notes, managing all of it. It was just too much, and I was not going to be honoring what their work was. And so it was a very, very, very long night that night. I got very upset. Like after rehearsal ended, kind of taking stock and the fact that I can't do everything, and really having to sort of recognize my vulnerability in that way. And I asked my husband for help. I said, I'm going to need some help. And he said that he would run my sound cues for me. And he has experience with this, so it wasn't like a whole new thing. But yeah, he said that he would be there for me. He met me, on the day of the show. He met me right after school to run it just myself and our lighting mentor. And then he was there at 5 o'clock at call time to run through those cues with cast, because again, we have a lot of collaborative things that have to happen all at once.
Sure.
So that was pretty crazy. But yeah, the positives of Thursday, I was able to take legitimate notes despite the sound issues. That's why the sound wasn't going great, because I was taking legitimate notes. The kids definitely ran the show on their own. Like, I didn't stop at all. I wasn't going to. I said, this is you kids. This is it. Literally is it. Didn't stop. It wasn't perfect, but there were moments of stalling, but they picked each other up, and that was really good. And we did not get to do a full second run, which is kind of a bummer. But it is what it is. We were running over, which I knew we would. I'd already emailed parents and said this one's going to be more like maybe 20 minutes to half an hour later, but really it was more like 20 minutes later than usual. Some kids had to go just because they just had to go at the time they did. So our cast started to dwindle. We were exhausted. And like, how many times can you like beat this thing with a stick at this point with all the issues that we were having? So, we kind of, we actually didn't do Hunger Games the second time because of the tech issues. It just wasn't going to be worth it at that moment. It was not strong. And I had already decided, like, we're going to find a different solution for this. So, in terms of asking for help. I knew it was going to be worked on the next day at some capacity. I knew that we were going to have to do it on Friday, the day of the show, and that's just where we were at, and because I wanted to make it right for them. So we did make that plan. I assured them that we will make it work. I assured them that every ounce of their effort will be honored in every way possible that I can make it happen. So after rehearsal, everybody left. I said, go get some sleep. We'll see you tomorrow. We're going to have a preview for the school, which is the opening scene, and a talk back. So they got to, all the kids kind of sat, on the stage, and I would sort of guide the discussion with the whole student body, and the kids themselves got to talk about all of the different facets from beginning to end. Not like, a couple of kids peppered in their comments about the different, things we've been talking about all year. So we clarified like what that would be, and then they all left, and after rehearsal, I finished our program, which I do. Yes. I finished the giant display that's outside of the theater that I do. And that actually includes like the pitch meeting notes, all examples of the kids' notes that they've done for like their arcs, their concept collages, like design idea, all these different things of the work, of their work I put up
throughout the entire
throughout the whole year. Yeah, for the kids to for the parents and the kids to kind of see,
Right.
you know.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and I just want to show, you know, everything that they've been doing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, exhausted, frustrated, some tears, a release of tears for sure, because just so tired. You know, I had a huge like realization, I guess you could say, in some ways, and in some ways it's I don't know, I hadn't like forgotten why I do this, but in all of my exhaustion, it was like I was just at the core of myself to like coming back to like the heart of why I do and how I do what I do with these kids, you know. And I had to work to trust that if I let go of the fears that I have and the expectations that I have and the judgments that I have and the attachment to what I thought it should be, if I let go of that, then it will happen. Then it will be successful. And I realized that I had to get out of the way. You know, I had to take all of that junk, all that anxiety and all of those things that were wrapped up, that were kind of in between me and my ability to really see that they have created something amazing, despite the flaws along the way, despite that it's not perfection and it's not their kids. It had gotten to me, and I had to actively release that, you know. And when I did that, then I was able to kind of start our show day in like a different perspective. But it was really kind of like a real eye opener for me, and like a slap in the face a little bit, you know, with love, but like definitely like, wow, like don't you tell them all day long, don't forget why you're here. Well, you need to remember why you're here too. And once I did that, you know, then I think we opened the door.
Where will that door lead Allie and her drama club ensemble? We'll find out in our final videocast as Allie shares the details of the showcase performance and her reflections on the overall process. Thank you for joining us on our Tech Rehearsal Odyssey. Good night.